Hello, everyone. Welcome to It's Mental podcast. When I'm recording this episode, I'm having a mental breakdown, but I'm really, really glad that I have this project could distract me while I make some meaningful output to help myself, my comedian friends, and audience who are suffering with mental illness right now. So I'm very, very grateful. This episode, I have a special guest. He is Oliver Sotra. Oliver is a very special comedian for me because we met at a very early stage of my comedy career. So for me, he's not only a comedy colleague, a friend, but also a mentor. I'm really excited that we have Oliver as our special guest for today. Um, he will talk about his journey with mental illness. At the age of 25, his life was falling apart, but after 13 years of reprogramming of his own mind, now he's able to living a happy life with his family and young daughter, despite he had two divorces before. So there's light, there's hope. Just hang on there. Without further ado, let me introduce our guest for today, Oliver Sotra. And today we have a special guest, Oliver Sotra. Oliver, can you introduce yourself?
I can try. Yes, I'm Oliver Sotra. I am a formerly professional comedian. I say formally because we're all sitting at home on, burning our old comedy notes in the fireplace to stay warm while the whole world shuts down. So I'm a comedian and martial arts instructor. I currently live in Berlin. And I guess I'm a colleague of yours. If comedians have colleagues, then Moni and I are colleagues, and our office is, dark, dank, smelly comedy basements where we get together and tell jokes to people.
Yeah. How do we know each other?
You and I met in Berlin a couple of years ago, several years ago, almost 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I think I was there for not your very first gig, but one of your very first gigs. I was there for, I think, your third or fourth show ever. And I liked you immediately. I thought this was a talented young comedian. And I thought you were very special. And I thought I am gonna make friends with this person, because usually the comedy community can be very cliquey and exclusive and difficult, and there's lots of personalities and minefields to navigate and engage. It's like any career, any professional space, people with egos, people with experience, people with ulterior motives. It can be very difficult. But obviously you're thick-skinned and you're quite a strong-minded person, so you were fine. But I still wanted to be your friend. So we hung out and we spoke a few times, and you have that abrasive personality that not everybody likes. Which I really like, because I have the same personality where, I have some people really like you if they're comfortable with themselves. They don't feel threatened by you. And I have that as well. That is a beautiful dog. Looks like a gremlin.
Yeah, it's. I think he is a mix of a border collie and a chihuahua. So a chihuahua raped a border collie. Then it's the result of this one.
I can't imagine a chihuahua raping anything. I think it's quite the feat of...
I got him from Macedonia.
Oh, Macedonia. That borders with Serbia, which is a country where one of my parents is from. Just a little tidbit of information there. So, and then you asked... Sorry, go ahead.
He is also a third world dog, like me.
Third world dog. China is not a third world country anymore. You can't play that card. China is the global superpower. Like you used to be able to play that third world card. Now you're not in that position of sympathy anymore,
Okay, let's continue. How we met?
Yes, so we you approached me. There was a competition for the New Talent Stand-Up Awards, and you approached me and you asked me if I could help you prepare some notes and help you get some steam built up for the competition. And I thought that was a fabulous idea, because I had actually wanted to give you some notes, but I have a rule where I'm like, I wait for somebody to come to me first because I don't want to be that guy. Like, well, listen, here's what you should do. I'm not like that. But I thought that in my own arrogance, I thought it was a really smart move of you to come to me. Like, this is a smart young comic coming to somebody for advice. Just because I think of everybody on the scene, it's myself and Liliana Velasquez who have the most experience in comedy, who are actually professional comedians. And then you won the competition, which I knew you would, and that was
yeah, my
nice.
trophy.
So we can say that it was about half of that pillow is mine. No, I thought, and from then, we would talk and see each other around, and sort of like colleagues / friends. You make a few allies in this business, and you make plenty of enemies. But you and I, we met each other on the stage or backstage in the comedy world, and that's where our association has begun.
Yeah,
for sure.
I have a funny story. At my very first show, I remember you were sitting with comedians, and you were like really nice and warm, trying to talk with me. For our podcast audience, if you haven't seen Oliver in live, he is a 2-meter tall guy, and I'm 155. So we look like a giant and a midget together. So it's really, really intimidating. So at the beginning, you were so warm to me, and I didn't know any comedians. I started to ask other. I said, "Do you know this really tall, weird guy? He's like creepy around, trying to follow me or something." Because I thought you are an audience and just trying to make friends with me, and I thought you are kind of weird. Then I realized you are a comedian.
My interest was purely professional.
Okay, yes. I am very happy. And so, what's your relationship? Mostly.
My relationship, you were saying?
Yeah. What's your relationship with mental illness?
Well, all jokes aside, the classic joke being like all comedians have a relationship with mental illness because we're all very much in touch with our quirkier sides. My personal relationship with mental illness is that I was in psychotherapy for years, almost 3 years. When I lived in Athens in Greece, I saw a clinical psychologist who put me through psychotherapy for years. And that was for a very specific issue. I had some phobias. I had a crippling claustrophobia, which came from other issues in my life, and he helped me through that. And there were years had gone by when I didn't fly on an airplane, and I wouldn't take an elevator, and I wouldn't go in any closed space. And it starts to ruin your life. And that psychologist became a mentor to me as well. A good psychologist will teach you psychology and familiarize you with the workings of your own mind and how it affects your behavior in order to help you overcome whatever problems you might have in life. And he made a very important distinction for me. The most important distinction he made for me was that we all have bad feelings, or we all have strong feelings that we manage in our daily lives. But when something becomes chronic or starts to affect your behaviors and has a major negative impact on your life, then we should go see a doctor. Like if we have a headache, we don't need to see a doctor. But if we have a chronic headache for a week, then we should go see a doctor. Like he made it clear for me that we shouldn't go see somebody unless we have something that we think is impacting our lives greatly on a daily basis. And that was something it was ruining my life. I couldn't travel. I couldn't do a lot of things. So he helped me with that. And nowadays, even years later, this was more than 10 years ago, I still remember everything he taught me. And you can self-diagnose to a certain extent, having seen a professional. Not by Googling things and reading shit on Quora or whatnot, or asking unqualified people. He also taught me another important thing was that you have to see the best doctor you can afford to see. because a mediocre or bad doctor can make your problem a lot worse than leaving it alone. This was something else that he taught me. Also, he was not a fan of medication. He didn't approve of medication only in very extreme circumstances or people with very specific disorders. He didn't like to give out pills, Valiums and Xanaxes and all of that. And if your doctor is quick to give you pills in the first section, that's a big red flag for that doctor. That was something. So my relationship with mental illness would be that, aside from, we all have issues. I had anger issues when I was younger, but not to the extent that it would start ruining my life. My relationship with mental illness would be, I'd like to think of myself as quite strong-minded, but I have a relationship that goes to specific disorders and phobias, more phobias than a general feeling of anxiety or depression, which is quite common nowadays. During this period, this year, I have been lower than ever before, but that's true of everybody. So it's not special. I don't feel special. It's not anything to wear as a badge of pride. I would say that I'm trying to deal with that myself at the moment. It hasn't come to the point where I feel like I need to see somebody. Let's put it that way.
May I ask, how old were you when you go to see the psychotherapist?
It's a good question. I was 25.
And how old are you now?
37.
Yeah. And do you remember, is there a trigger for you to realize, I need to look for help?
That is a very good question. I think the biggest trigger for me to see somebody professionally was when your close friends and family, more than two people who are close to you and care very much about you, both suggest you should go and see somebody about something. That's a good indication that maybe you should think about it. So somebody like your mother, your girlfriend, or boyfriend, or whomever in your life, somebody close to you, both tell you maybe you should see someone, then that's a good sign. But as far as spontaneously, I think a lot of men, especially young men, find it like a weakness to go and see a doctor. And that's something that comes from an unmanaged ego, which is a terrible influence in a lot of men's lives when you have an unmanaged ego. And I remember the trigger being when I was thinking I wanted to leave this place that I lived, but I couldn't fly away. I thought, now I should go and see somebody. When I was feeling trapped, ironically, a fear of closed spaces was trapping me in my life. So a good trigger was people close to you telling you to go see someone, and you coming to a block in your life thinking, I don't want to live like this anymore. Those were two triggers for me. Okay. So it was you've been through of this therapy treatment for 3 years. Is there a tipping point make you realize, this really helps me? Or is more slow change? It's a slow change. It was a slow change. I remember I was a very challenging patient for my doctor because, my doctor would sit me down and explain to me, so this happens because of this, and you don't like closed spaces because of feelings in your real life, and a long explanation. I'd be like, oh, great. Well, I guess I'm fucking cured then. Thanks, doctor. Everything's great now. Wow, look, it just disappeared. I say, is this, and I would challenge him. I would say, is this all you have for me? An explanation, because I could have read this in a book. How about some drills or a technique or some drugs or some hypnosis or some practical help that will change my thought patterns? And so he said he would tell me that often when you expose the root of a problem, it brings it into your conscious mind away from your unconscious mind, and that will help you slowly start to self-heal. But in my case, I needed more practical drills and things that would help me reprogram the way I thought. So that's a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, when you do practical things to reprogram the way your mind goes about solving problems. So he would give me those exercises, but it was a slow process. It took time. It was not like a moment of realization where I realized I was cured. And in fact, even years later, it would still come back, but then you would go through the exercises and the drills, and and you would be able to manage your emotions much better. So he gave me the tools to manage my own emotions rather than change my emotions.
I think that is a very interesting point. I want to share a story of mine. 3 years ago, when I was really, really depressed, I thought it's because of a breakup, because I feared of having a perfect life in Chinese sense, which is study hard, go to university, get a good job, earn a lot of money, find a man, get married, have kids, buy a house and cars. And I realized everything I have achieved. And now at that time, I'm at a point, I just need to find a partner, start a family, and my life can be perfect. But finding a partner was so hard. I just couldn't meet anyone. And I at that moment I was really obsessed with one guy, and my friend told me that her doctor told her it's not about therapy, it's not about helping you to change yourself to get this man, but it's more about to accept the fact and realize it's not important. And at that point, I think it sounds like crazy. I was like, if this doctor cannot help you to achieve this goal, what's the fuck? Why we need this doctor? And then in my case, I realized it's totally true. I went to the therapy with a mind that I want to change my life. I want to become more attractive. I want to find a partner. But at the end, I came out to realize I need to focus more on myself, and I should learn how to enjoy my life on my own. And ironically, once I figured out this, I actually met someone, and we are in a
exactly.
3-year relationship, which is more stable than any relationship I ever had. So the fact that not changing the reality itself, but perceive the reality in different way, make you feel better and see more of the bright side. I think it's hard to understand, and it totally sounds like bullshit if you are struggling now, but it's so true once you get out of it.
It's exactly right. You couldn't have put it better. Changing your perception of a situation rather than changing the situation is exactly what good therapy is about. When I was very unhappy in Athens, in Greece, I hated living there. I hated everything about it. I hated the city. I hated the weather. I hated my entire life, my circumstances, everything. I hated it all. My doctor would tell me, leave or change the things here that make you unhappy. Take practical steps. And he said, and if you want to stay, then change the way you see your life here. There is a little bit of wisdom in the old religious mantras and practices. Like when you give thanks for what you have before you eat, even if you don't have much on the table, you look at it as a glass half full rather than, oh, we don't have any food, we're starving. But we have a little bit of food, we'd be thankful for that. It's like you say, it's changing the perception of your reality rather than changing the reality of it. What you say about relationships is very interesting. You say, as soon as you stop looking, there it was. Because you perhaps were not looking, you had not perhaps realized what it was you wanted yet. You still had this superimposed idea of what everybody else thought you should have. And you convince yourself slowly that's what I should have. And that is a source of great unhappiness for a lot of people.
Oliver, this is so true. For my whole life, I thought I wanted a guy who is successful, career driven, and smart, intelligent, all that kind of things. Before my depression, my typical guy I wanted was either a PhD or a consultant, and who's really career driven. And then during my depression, I start to lose up a bit. And at the end, I was dating a guy who's unemployed and claimed himself to be a CEO of a startup, which they only have 2 employees, and the other one is the co-CEO. And he's totally an artist and so free. And in the past, I was like, I have phobia for artists because I think they are unreliable and they are just out of nowhere. So it's totally the type of guy I would be far away from. But because the society and myself, I thought, oh, money is important, career is important. I want this type of guy. But actually, I want them because I thought I want them. But actually, they are not compatible with me. Deep inside, I'm a free mind.
So what you realized was something else my therapist taught me is that when you have a relationship, you can only have a relationship, a successful or good relationship, when both parties are focused mainly on themselves.
Yeah.
So when you took control of your own self and you decided to look inside of yourself, become more introspective and change and remove this layer of superimposed morals and realities in your own head and learn yourself, learn who you were, you became much more of an individual standing by herself. Then you met somebody who was also standing by himself, not career driven, because somebody who is single-mindedly devoted to his career neglects everything else in his life, his family, his soul, his spirit, his own sense of self and development. So that becomes I'm sure it's not for everybody, but a single-minded person who is focused only on one thing is not a balanced person. So once you have two strong foundations, then you can have a bridge between the two of them. You can't have a relationship where one person is leaning on the other, or even worse, when both are leaning on each other. You can only have a good relationship when both people stand alone. You're the same person when you get into a relationship. Of course, you grow and you learn and you change as time goes by, but you leave with the same blueprint in your mind that I'm focused on being an individual.
That's so true. That's so true. There's like I'm in lots of mental illness Facebook group. Lots of people, they ask, right now I'm in a depression. Is it bad for the romantic life? I think yes, there's influence, and the worst influence is that people try to find a lover to save them, to save their life, to give them a hope. So you can live relying on the other person's happiness, and this mindset is very dangerous.
This is a dangerous way of thinking. Dangerous way of thinking is that when you think somebody's going to save you, or I need this type of person in my life, then I'll be happy. That's called conditional happiness. Once I get my own house, I'll be happy. Once I have enough money in the bank, I'll be happy. Once I find the right woman or man, I'll be happy. You give yourself a condition, which presupposes that you're not happy now. So if you choose to be happy with what you have now, but have goals for the future as well, then you'll be happy. Because when you put those conditions on yourself, you'll get what you want, that person, and realize, I'm still not happy. I've got the house, I've got the money, I've got the wife for the husband. I'm still not happy. Because you have to choose to be. You can, the most important thing I learned in therapy as well was you can build yourself in any way you want. You have the self-editing tools. You can reprogram the software in your brain. You can reprogram yourself to become somebody else entirely, or add many things to yourself, or take away things. You can choose to let go of anger or sadness or even love if it's toxic or bad. You can choose to let go of it, and you can choose to move in another path, which I always found a lot of people don't realize yet, that they have an incredible power to change, like you say, the perception of things, and to change who they are. Being happy with where you are is very important. You can choose to start being happy, or even just to start being grateful or less depressed than you are. Of course, if there are chemical imbalances involved, then we need to, add some therapy into that, either pharmaceutical or whatever. I
have a question. You said it's about reprogramming your mind. Can you make a simple example, like what you used to think, and then after the therapy, it helped you to see the other side of the same thing?
Well, I have two quite compatible philosophies on that point. So I was training Kung Fu for almost 20 years now. And my psychotherapy went hand in hand with that, because a lot of Confucian or Taoist wisdom is rooted on quite practical mental approaches to mental health. So you have a practical way of being. So when you exercise every day, or you train martial arts, to understand that there is an obstacle in your way. For example, I can't get a job, I can't find a partner, I can't be happy. There's an obstacle in your way, whether it's something physical, like there's a person blocking your path. There are many different ways to get around that one obstacle in your way. It is not just one way of making yourself happy. It's like, oh, I can't find a partner. Well, you can also choose to be alone. You can also choose to have two partners. You can choose to have one after the other. There are many different solutions to this. You can choose to be alone for a while. You can choose to be with somebody and then somebody else. You can choose to devote your time to something outside of yourself. You can become religious. You can help stray animals. You can do anything you want. You can fill that space in yourself in many different ways. And if you remove that single-mindedness, it's this one thing that I want, you can realize that there are many different ways to satisfy that urge within yourself. So as a practical example, if you could just see the different options available, then you'll have much more, you'll have more tools to give yourself what you wanted.
I think you mentioned a word, single-mindedness. I think that's a very good word. I feel lots of depression and sadness come from this, because life, they have so many options. Like for I want to make an example about myself. 3 years ago, I had an episode which it was really, really severe. And since then, I came out of it. I always use myself as a success story, that even I was dying, there's hope. And I after 1 year of not get out of work, I recovered. I started to do. At the meantime, I did stand-up comedy. I achieved quite much. I went back to my professional life. I got a better job, and I achieved tremendously. Then at the end, one small thing happened. I failed the end goal, and make me deny all the achievement I had, but focus on the failure at the end. And I think that's a single-mindedness there. I couldn't see anything else. But this is the bad part. But on the bright side, as soon as I realized what happened, like this is the reason, my single-mindedness, I start to force myself to see the full picture. And right now, I still cannot process this failure, but at least I have the tools I learned in the past years. I know that, okay, I cannot process this, but how about let me process other information? For example, I am on sick leave again from work. Instead of focus on I failed my career, maybe I can think about, maybe it's a good opportunity that I can start a podcast to talk about mental illness, to help more people who are struggling now. Then when I focus on this, I forgot to be sad with my failure. And I know time, like over time, I slowly build the capacity to process the thing I couldn't process right now. So I'm just giving it time. And also there's a famous formula. Comedy is about a tragedy plus time. So I'm just waiting for the time for the comedy to kick in.
There it is, right there. That was it. I started laughing. Boom! Enough time has passed. Now it's funny. But what you say about failure is very interesting, because we learn much more from our failures than we do from our successes. Much more. The times in your life when you're the most broken are the times when you grow the most. The times when you seek out to heal yourself. You build yourself up again. So if you've ever been through a painful or tragic event, like somebody close to you dying, or a painful public divorce, something like that. You can become humiliated, broken, and feel smaller than you ever have, and your emotions completely overwhelm you. But in that, and there's the old saying that a broken heart and an empty wallet are the best teachers in life. So during those painful moments, you learn how to grow the most. So like you say, you learn from like you had one small failure, which you focused on despite all these successes and things that you had done to grow yourself and expand who you were as a person. And that's very natural. It's natural to look at a failure and it hurt. But the approach that you have to it right now is exactly the right move, to be like, well, what does this give me? What does this small setback in this one area, and it's not even a setback because the failures expose where you could have done something differently. And boom, there you are, doing something completely differently in another sphere, something that's more relatable to yourself, what you want to do in your life, and you feel yourself being fulfilled by that. So you turn what is seemingly a drawback into an opportunity. And everything becomes an opportunity when you look at it like that. Again, it's your perception of events which can alter your mental state entirely.
Yeah. You mentioned like a painful divorce. Do you want to elaborate on it? Because do you want to explain to audience your relationship with divorces?
Well, everybody goes through bad breakups, and some breakups are worse than others. And sometimes there's a normal breakup where two people just don't want to be with each other anymore. And sometimes there is a spectacular public meltdown where things become completely out of control. So, my divorce was quite a few years ago. And that was when I was married to a woman who then discovered she was a lesbian. And I was living in a country where I was quite famous, and I was in the newspapers and on TV a lot. And her family were quite publicly known. So it became newspaper knowledge that I was getting divorced and that my partner was gay. And that's in a country where that is actually news, whereas here it would be like just a divorce. But over there, that's front page news. And this is a macho, sort of more, I want to say underdeveloped, but that's the wrong word. I want to say like a country which doesn't have the same views on the normalcy of sexuality that we have in most like Western European countries. And so people would say to me things like, so do you feel like less of a man since your wife decided to leave you for a woman? And like you say, your perception of things was, so for a little while, of course you did. You would think, my God, she rejected your entire gender through you. That's how you would feel. Mm-hmm. Then you realize afterwards that if you wanted to look at it in an ego-shattering way, you could. It's because of me. It's because of my failings as a man. It's because of this or whatever. It has nothing to do with you. That's the especially quite specifically male egocentricness, where you think that it was something I did. And that's in a lot of breakups. You think, oh, they left me because I'm XYZ, bad at this, or a horrible person or whatever, just not good enough. They just didn't like you anymore. They liked somebody else. That's all there is to it. It's nothing to do with you. So when you break up with somebody, it's mostly about them. It's it's not really about you. It's just you're better with somebody else. They're better with somebody else. So you can't look at it as you being rejected. Because if you do, you will really make your pain a lot worse. So you can think of it. And also you shouldn't shut that out completely either. You can't think, well, it was nothing to do with me. I'm great. They're an idiot. Because that's unhealthy too. Now you're just not dealing with anything. You have to just realize that, okay, they left, it's sad, but soon everything will be better, which is exactly what it was. It's a lot more painful when it's public and it's in your face all the time. and people make fun of you about it. That's an extra layer. But then, as you know, as a comedian, we have a unique medium through which we exorcise all our emotional garbage, because we go on stage and we share it with everybody publicly, and that's how we get it out of our system, which I think is a very healthy way of dealing with our own anxieties and emotional baggage. So for a year, I would talk about nothing else than that was going on with me. I would make it public myself and make it funny and have everybody laugh at me so that it's beaten into nothing. So now it doesn't hurt anymore. So you own it. You own your own situations, no matter what they are, which I think is it's an armor in itself.
Yeah. Are you in a happy marriage right now?
I am. I'm happily married with a young child, and I couldn't be happier. Yeah.
And how many divorces you had? And what the story told us?
The story tells us that when you try, that your failings teach you your successes. That's the story. That if you can't look at a breakup as a failed relationship, maybe it was a successful relationship that only lasted 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or whatever. It was a successful relationship that ended. These days, when you look at marriage being forever, I would like to stay married forever. I definitely don't want another divorce, that's for sure. But when you try again and again, you always get better at something. And when you don't try again and you feel beaten or scared or afraid, or you don't want to try something again, you are limiting yourself. And the greatest limitations we place in our lives are on ourselves, not on other people. We put ourselves into these boxes of doubt and inexperience and inability, whereas you could pick up and go. If you're not happy where you are, dump that person, change your job, move house, move country, learn another language, change your name, be somebody else, learn something different, do whatever you want. You are not limited.
The thing you're talking doesn't sound like dealing with mental illness. More like someone has committed a murder and started a new identity.
Of course, it's a little bit extreme. Like I say, like you're absolutely right. Sounds like you're running away from something.
Yeah.
But the important feeling is that when people get very depressed or very scared, they think there's no way out.
Yeah.
Except the worst way out, which is, the last option any of us should ever consider.
Have you ever?
Because there's no guarantee.
Have you ever had suicidal thoughts ever?
Not serious ones. No. No, not serious ones. It never got that bad. No.
That's good.
Personally.
You mentioned about talking your personal pain on stage. So when did you start to do comedy?
I started doing comedy when I was 25, 26, right when I was in the middle of my psychotherapy with my therapist. I started doing comedy, and I was traveling to London a lot, and I started doing comedy in London. And then I did exactly that. My relationship ended. I quit my job. I moved country. I changed my whole life, and that's when I started becoming a comedian. And then I realized that this was something I really wanted to do, and this was something that gave me so much of what I had been missing. And it was incredibly exciting, and it was incredibly difficult because, as you know, when you start, it is not easy. It is one of the hardest things to start. And as performance art goes, it is the hardest, in my opinion, because you need genuine results every 8 to 10 seconds. You cannot fake your way through comedy. You can fake your way through most other forms of art, but comedy is not one of them. It has to be real, and it has to be good. Otherwise, everybody knows immediately. So I spent 3 years in London on the open mic circuit, driving to shows 2 hours from my house to do 5 minutes. 2 hours back after sucking, like sitting there in the car, like what am I doing, you know? But you slowly learn the game and learn how to access the parts of yourself you need to be funny and to be a comedian. And you get good at it. The more time you put into something, the better you get at it. You have to have some talent in comedy, but as long as you work hard, you will get where you want to go. And then I was very happy. You know, doing comedy was that period of my life when I was single and starting comedy. That was when I was purely focused on myself and what I wanted to do, not all the expectations. Similar to yours, which was, you know, I was driving a Jaguar and had a big house and a little boat, and I was making a lot of money, and I was a broker, and I wore suits to work and a gold watch. And I have never been more successful in traditional terms and more profoundly miserable at the same time in my life. I was miserable and I had everything that I should want. You know what I mean? A lot of this.
Do you remember your first mic?
Yes, I sucked horribly. It was terrible.
Where was it?
There's a video of it online, which I will never share with any other comedian ever.
But I'm special. I'm your good friend.
Never. Because we're comedians. I know you'll cut it up and publish it. We're comedians. There's no trust there. None whatsoever.
Where did you do your first gig?
My first gig was in a shitty little bar in Sutton in South London. It's barely almost even London. It's 2 hours from the center of London by car, like an hour and a half away. And there were 20 people in the audience, most of them the comedians and their friends. And I had 10 minutes, which is a lot for a first show. And I ran out of stuff to talk about after 2 minutes, but I stayed on stage for the remaining 8 minutes. And I didn't know how to do crowd work. I had the mic held way too low, like all the classic mistakes. And I didn't get any laughs. Just got like awkward, nervous, horrified silence. And so I thought, I need to do this again. Because I'd actually gone to this open mic with a friend who wanted to try stand-up. And he said, can you please do it as well so that I'm not doing it alone?
That's such a cliche, how people started.
It's a real cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason because they happen a lot. And I was like, well, how hard can that be? Easy, right? You know. So I did it and I sucked horribly. And then and I thought, well, I can't let that be my only time that I do stand-up. So I went back again the next week, but all week long I was trying to write jokes and trying to do bits, and I really prepared this time. And then I got 2 laughs and then I was hooked. I didn't want to do anything else after that. After getting 2 little laughs, I felt like a god, you know, on stage. And I was like, this is what I want to do.
Did your friend also stayed in comedy?
No, never again. He did 1 show. He was even worse than me and he never went back again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Have you ever, before you do comedy, have this idea ever came into your mind?
Yeah, for sure. When I grew up watching Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy Raw was my idol. Eddie Murphy was my idol, and Eddie Murphy Raw was the first special I ever saw. And I had a VHS cassette because I'm that old. I had a VHS tape of Eddie Murphy Raw, and I would play it over and over and over and over again. And to this day, I can recite to you from the top of my head the whole hour and a half, word for word. Like I know it back to front. I know it. And I thought Eddie Murphy is the coolest, funniest guy I've ever seen in my life. I want to be like that. And he was the first comedian I'd ever seen that made comedy cool in a way. All the other comedians before him were, look at me, I'm so dumb, I'm so fat, I'm so ugly, blah, blah, blah. All like, let's laugh at me. Most of the stuff I'd seen in England anyway. And then I saw this guy who was slim and cool and sexy, and I was like, this guy's amazing. So I wanted to be like Eddie Murphy when I was a kid. And then I was always a little bit of a stand-up fan. And I remember once writing some notes if I would ever try and do a set myself. And then when it actually happened, because I went with a friend, then I threw myself into it to start. But I had thought about it maybe once or twice before. It was never like a long ambition of mine. It suddenly hit me, I want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Cool.
never even been to a live comedy show before that first night that I went on stage.
Cool. Do you feel the stand-up helped with your mental health?
Yes, very much so. Absolutely.
Can you describe in what kind of way it helped you?
Well, we touched upon it a little bit before. It would help me to share things.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people have a problem with talking to somebody about what's bothering them, or they have a problem where they talk too much and that person's not listening anymore. When you do stand up, the people in the audience, they can't leave. They have to listen to you.
Lock the door.
You have them hostage. You have a hostage situation. You have them. You can talk to them. Plus, it's somewhere public. When you, I don't know if you've ever been to like an Alcoholics Anonymous or a Narcotics Anonymous meeting where people, they share, and just talking about something, sharing something with more than one person in a group with people who have similar experiences than you can really, really help you to legitimize your feelings, to not feel judged, to not feel stupid or weak or any of these associations we give our own emotions. So sharing is a very important, and doing comedy, you're going to get judged horribly. So it's not like a safe space, but at the same time, having the validation of people laughing at something you have constructed for them to laugh at, but it comes from a very real place as well, which I think is good comedy. When somebody tries to write jokes and tell them on stage, I don't think they're going to do very, very well in comedy, because you have to be Jerry Seinfeld. You have to be a genius to write clever jokes good enough to make people laugh. I think if you share your own life and your own experience, like any good art, it has to come from a real place, or the audience can smell it. People can feel it. That's what makes good comedy. But aside from what makes good comedy, sharing what's going on in your life and drawing people through your own mental process this way in a humorous way, it helps to legitimize your feelings and get them out. Because otherwise we wouldn't talk to people. If you're a comedian, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
You feel like you're funnier and smarter than most people, right? Because you're a stand-up comedian. We all feel like that way, and that's wrong. That's arrogant of us, but it's a natural thing. So we don't really open up to people until we open up to everybody on the stage. So for us, that's a little bit more unique, but it's still a way of sharing. So I would say, like you say, stand-up comedy helped me with my mental health enormously, because it helps me feel validated. It helps me get my ideas and my emotions and my thoughts out of myself and into a space where I have discussed them. Whereas privately with somebody like your wife or your close friends, you might feel weak or judged in a negative way. So yeah, it helps enormously. And that would translate to everybody else who doesn't do stand-up, would be talk to someone who's not going to judge you, or just talk to anyone at any point.
I want to comment on this. When you say we open to everyone, all the audience, I think that's a very good point on two sides. On one hand, I think having mental illness, most of the time I know it's correlated with low self-esteem and insecurity and self-doubting. Being able to just talk it out is a very powerful way to get rid of the shame. And once the shame is gone, it's way easier to understand the situation as it is.
That's a very good point. The shame. Yeah, please continue. Sorry. Yeah.
And
shame.
the second part is that we open to everyone. It's also a way to have a heterogeneous feedback, because I don't know everyone, but most of people in my life, they have very homogeneous people around them. For example, I have a traditional profession, I work in a big tech company. I'm paid really well, and if I'm not doing comedy, then everyone around me is with the same type of mindset. They really, really care about their career. They judge themselves by how much they earn, and they all treat as a career is the most important thing in their life. If I'm not a comedian right now, having the failure I just had, I wouldn't find anyone to tell me it's okay. It's just a job. For example, now I'm on sick leave, staying at home, working on the podcast. When I told my comedian friends, everyone is like, wow, this is really cool. You get paid and you can do some project. And now it's Corona, take advantage of the SEO and build the audience. But when I talk with my friends from my previous life, who's consultant, who's PhD, their first reaction is that
disaster.
I talked with a friend last week. His first question is, "Oh, now you are staying at home. Is your partner okay with it?"
Huh?
Then I told my partner, he farted on the idea because my partner loves being unemployed. He loves to have free time. He loves to do all kinds of projects.
Amazing. You see the difference in the way people see things from two people that you are friends with, and you have at least two sides, 3, 4, 5, however many sides to your personality. You have the hardworking career person inside of you, and you have the performance artist inside of you, and you have these things that don't easily mesh together, but they don't have to. You can be two different people in two different worlds. We all are many times. And your friend is immediately asking you, is your partner okay with this?
So what it implies? It implies I should feel ashamed about myself because I'm a loser, and this will make my partner judge me, and I'm in a disadvantaged, imbalanced position in my relationship. If I don't have this comedy side, if I'm still living my previous life, that's the way I would go and go deeper and deeper into the depression.
Absolutely. And us on this side, we're like, Moni's at the top now. Moni is killing it more than anybody else we know, because she's getting paid to explore the other side. I mean, it's fantastic. You couldn't be in a better position. It depends how you look at it. Like it's such a cliche, but it's literally glass half full, glass half empty, and your one friend sees it empty and the other one sees it full. It's only perspective.
Yeah, so I want to commenting on the audience part. I think by talking with a diverse group of people, you get a diverse idea, and diversity is the opposite of single-mindedness. And single-mindedness leads to like self-doubt, low self-esteem, and self-judgment. But diverse feedback encourage you to see all different sides of the same thing. I think by talking with a group of different people is like a therapy in its own way.
Absolutely. I completely agree. But extremes, as a little note to that, extremes of anything is bad. My therapist used to tell me that bringing things to the middle is a good way. Old ideas about balance. So being completely unfocused and talking to too many people from too many different spheres can be bad too, as well as one type of person from one place. So single-mindedness or too much diversity can be two sides of a different coin, but somewhere in the middle, so you can be focused on the things you enjoy and the things you want to do, on the things that please you and the things that give you a practical basis for a real life. Those things are important, but being extreme in anything, having too much extreme behavior, is always detrimental to your mental health, for sure.
Before we wrap it up, I want to ask you a question. Do you have a sad story which you really, really couldn't cope with it? And through comedy, now you are able to face it and even make jokes about it?
Well, like we talked about earlier, my divorce is a perfect example of that. When I got divorced, and I was in a very strange place, new place, where my whole life had changed immediately, and I'd gone from feeling, very happy with my life to feeling completely broken and rejected and humiliated. Talking about it through comedy really put me back on top, because I managed to take that experience and make it into art, make it into something that pleased everyone and pleased myself. So I would turn it around, laugh at myself, find the humor in my, at that time, greatest pain. And now looking back, the whole thing seems ridiculous. The whole thing is a joke, which I can talk about casually. And the lessons that come from that are profound. But and you talk to other people about that who would be like, I would never have recovered from that, ever. Would never be the same again. And that's an old expression which I don't like, because of course you'll never be the same again. You're going to be someone different after that. You're going to be everything you were before, but other things too. So being the same is not something you want to be. You want to be different, new,
or even better.
Better is always, it can presuppose that you weren't good enough to begin with. So if you think about something like, I want to be better in life, that doesn't mean that you're somewhere bad to begin with. I want to just have more of this, more of that, go more of there, more of here, or less of here and less of there. When I talk to people about mental illness, I try not to use terms like good or bad or better or worse, just a different path, a different way. Somewhere where we have less undesirable behavior than we had before, so that we can craft our days into things that we have more control over. And often control is an illusion, but you can only control the way you internalize things. Like you say, you can't control the situation, only your perception of it, which is, if we can control our emotional reactions to certain stimuli, then we'll be like, why am I getting sad about this? Why am I getting angry about this? Why am I getting depressed about this? When we could look at the event or the stimulus without an emotional reaction, or with a much reduced emotional reaction, and step aside from it and move around and continue somewhere else, and think about it from a more removed, abstract locus, which has always been a useful tool for me when it comes to these strong emotional events, or when something terrible happens. You get a huge bill, or somebody hits your car, or somebody dumps you, or whatever. You can look at it for a moment and think, well, I don't have to have an emotional reaction about this. I can go away and think, you can take time. You have all the time you want. You don't need to react in a certain way. And we have conditioned ourselves to have reflexes, like you touch something hot, you jerk your hand away. But you could, through training, keep it there and burn yourself if you wanted to. You can override your reflexive responses to things just by thinking about them, talking about them, analyzing them. Not too much, just a little bit. So you have to become friends with your diseases, like it's the old way. You become friends, come to get to know the things you don't like about yourself rather than ignore them. And then slowly they become assimilated and you split away from them.
Okay. I think we are run out of time. Let's wrap it up. So I have a few questions for the wrapping up. So if you can share one best practice, if today you wake up, you realize it's a horrible day, you feel like shit, what's your best tip?
A lot of people have this, and they say you should exercise. You should get physical exercise in order to get the blood moving around your body, to get the endorphins flowing. But then you think to yourself, why am I running on a treadmill or lifting weights? Everything I gained with this a week later is just lost. My suggestion is always to train martial arts. Start learning a new skill, something that has practical benefits for you physically, emotionally, spiritually. Go and start learning Kung Fu or Tai Chi, or certain styles of karate, a few different styles of martial arts, which will focus your mind and your body. And everything that you train, everything that you exercise is knowledge that stays with you even if your physical fitness drops. And I like Chinese martial arts because of their focus on internal and qigong, breathing, because all of those things can be done no matter what your level of physical fitness. You can do them alone. Right now there are no classes, whatever. You can do them alone. You can a lot of the knowledge is out there for free. And breathing exercises and meditation, and as an extension of meditation and breathing, practical martial arts training that has breathing and meditation inside of it, focused meditation, that would be my best suggestion for anyone who wants to do something practical each day. It's a bad day, I'm going to spend the whole day training martial arts. That's it.
Cool. You have a martial arts school in Berlin, right?
I do. I have a Wing Chun school in Berlin. It's called Island Wing Chun Berlin. You can find it on Facebook. It's got a wonderful group of students. Right now we're on pause because of this all, but as soon as we're allowed to get back to training, everybody's welcome to look me up and come and train, because I have a focus exactly in that way on breathing and agility and practicality and fitness through learning your own body through biomechanical study.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So the next question is, do you have your favorite comedy special which related to the mental topic?
Well, like I said, Eddie Murphy was my favorite comedian growing up, and he's still up in there. And he plays every character himself. So he was almost like a schizophrenic type comedian where he would become 3, 4, 5 different characters in one sketch, which he would play out with one microphone seamlessly between himself. So his comedy special isn't directly about mental illness as such, but he was a comedian, I feel, that was able to own this idea of disassociated self. So if you had 2 people or 3 people in different situations and you might not like that about yourself, Eddie Murphy's Raw will show you that you can be funny as every single one of those people, or even turn it to your advantage. Being a chameleon and being able to show different faces to different people is something that is a huge tool you have at your disposal. So Eddie Murphy Raw would be one that is not directly about mental illness, but definitely if you watch it, you can see how this idea of multiple personalities can benefit you in life greatly.
Cool. Audience, if you need to use some laughs, check it out. And the next question, we might have some people who's in depression, who's really sad, and they are also comedy fans, and they are thinking about starting. And what's your recommendation for them?
Oh, the recommendation to start comedy would be try not to do your first gig over Zoom, because I've been doing comedy for 12 years, and the 2 Zoom gigs I've had sucked horribly. So no matter how good you are or how talented you are or how much you want to get started, if you can hold on and wait until the comedy starts back up again, that would be my advice. In Berlin is a great place to start comedy, or London or New York. And if you're somewhere where there's no comedy scene, you can start your own show, and you can contact any of us. We'd be happy to give you advice about how to do that. And whenever you try something new, it always makes you feel more alive. It gets you outside of your comfort zone. If you suck at it, which you probably will, stick with it for a little while until you learn to absorb the things you like about it. And comedy is a great way to meet people, do something different, and change how you feel at the moment. It's definitely a good way to start.
By the way, I didn't suck on my first gig.
No, you were pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, so the last
I saw
question.
You 4 or 5 in, but it's pretty good.
Were you at the first gig of mine? Like I was roasting?
No, I don't think so.
The white people.
No.
Okay.
I've seen you roast white people many times, but I wasn't at your first white roast. I think I was at your 4th or 5th gig, and you were very fresh, but I was like, that's talent. You can see that. Yeah, it was good. It was a very funny show. I was laughing, and it's an open micer with 4 shows under her belt that was making me laugh genuinely. I was like, that's cool. This one's going to go somewhere.
Yeah. So our last question before closing. Now it's quarantine during Corona. Probably lots of people are feeling like depressed or with all kinds of issues. For those people who are still struggling, who are in the dark space right now, if you can talk with them, what would you say to them?
I would say that I'm there too. We're all there. I'm in that same space. I might have had years of comedy and psychotherapy and trained martial arts and have all these tools at my disposal to help me stay on top of my mental health, and I still have bad days. So we're all in the same space, because if the whole world is in the toilet and you feel like things couldn't get any worse, it's small consolation to realize that everybody else is in the same position as you are. But try and remember, like, through this, even if you don't want to talk to anybody, you're not alone, because we're all there. No matter all the things you can be grateful for that you have a roof over your head, or a relationship, or some food on a table, or something, everybody is terrible at the moment. Like, I haven't spoken to a single person who's in a great place mentally or financially or whatever. Everybody is struggling. So we're all going through this together. That's one small consolation. It sucks right now, and we don't know if it's going to get better very soon, but everybody's in it together, at least. That's all I can share.
Cool. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for this session.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and what you're doing is awesome.
Yeah, I just hope with this podcast I can help myself for sure, and then I can help the comedians to have a way to talk right now, and probably we can impact a few audience. Maybe they will start to do comedy, or maybe they are really in dark place and see some hope from us. Yeah, I think it's a topic is so dearing to me. I really hope over time, together we can help a few people.
I'm sure you will. I'm glad to have been a part of it for this episode.
How are you doing? I'm very glad that you made so far till the end of the podcast. What do you think about Oliver's story? What's your reason? Listen to this podcast? Is it because you have experience with mental illness, either in the past or current? Or you listen to it because someone who you care about, they are suffering right now? Let me know by leave me a comment or write me an email. If you like this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. If you prefer to watch the podcast with video, you can find us on YouTube too. So that's it. It's our third episode of It's Mental podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a very good day and stay alive.